and welcome to No Off Season, presented by Amazon Business. I'm Zena.
I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And I'm Ben Pickman.
And today on the show, no, there's not therapy happening. I know Ben and Sabreena are looking very comfortable beside each other because they're in preparing for the finals game because, yeah, it's 2025 WNBA Finals, and they're in Vegas together. And I am so excited because we're going to break down this series, right? Phoenix Mercury going up against Las Vegas Aces, squaring off in Game 1. It's so much fun. There's been so much anticipation for this. First 7-game series ever. But of course, I know some of you guys are waiting for something. Yeah, there's a little bit of news. A lot of stuff that happened earlier this week, and we haven't talked about it yet. So yes, we are finally here. We're going to break some things down. Guys, what a week it has been in the WNBA. What was before even the conversation we're going to talk about, the exit interview, what was the craziest news that you saw even before that?
I would say the 2:00 p.m. news dump that the Dallas Wings were firing Chris Koclanes right after Curt Miller tweeted the Theodore Roosevelt man in the arena quote.
Thank you. I had to check the time on that Curt Miller quote.
2 to 3 minutes before the email came out.
I was like, because, on X it's just like 8 hours. And I was like, no, I got to actually check this. What is the point of this quote, Curt Miller? And also, in the midst of all of this craziness, you're just going to slide that in there, bro? You're just going to let us know? Ben, what'd you think?
I mean, can I run down some other news that came down? Okay,
please,
so we have Unrivaled is going to play in Philadelphia. They're going to make a tour stop there.
But without Caitlin Clark?
No Caitlin Clark in Unrivaled this year.
Right,
that is news as of Thursday. The WNBA Finals next year will be played in part on USA Today Network, or USA Network, rather.
USA Network.
Not USA Today
Right.
Network, excuse me.
Poor USA Network.
Yeah.
You want to talk about someone that thought they were doing it with the way they came out.
They had like
their
30
announcement.
minutes of airtime before Napheesa Collier was like, I got something to say.
Oh my, we were all like, yeah, 50 games, doubling up on Wednesdays, woo! And then Napheesa scooted into a room. And that's what we've got to get into. Wait, Ben, did you finish that list off, by the way?
No, that's. I think those are the big 3 or 4 items.
Yeah.
That we should
Yeah.
consider.
Oh, by the way, there was a Game 5
That's right.
also. Indiana Fever
That went into overtime.
taking on the Vegas Aces. It went to overtime.
And
this
Kelsey
is the
Mitchell had
team
like a
that was down.
debilitating, situation. It was very
Like,
tense and scary and all sorts of things.
Yes. And I do want you guys, if you have a moment, to go read Kelsey Mitchell's statement about her injury. There's a lot of like doctors that are chiming in on social media talking about what she had, muscle degenerative rhabdo. Like, this is a whole thing I'm learning now. But either way, the Indiana Fever had their exit interviews. Kelsey Mitchell, she is okay. She is recovering. But that is not even the biggest news that happened on that day. Not that overtime game in which the Aces were able to move on to the finals. It was Napheesa Collier's comments. Now, we did not have an emergency pod. I know y'all were blowing up my DMs like, where are you at? Where are y'all at? We got to hear what Ben, Sabreena, and Zena are saying about this. But that's because Ben and Sabreena were working behind the scenes to make sure that we had all of the information and also getting prepared for a Game 5 and also the finals. So now we're here. We've gathered our thoughts. Let's go ahead and dive in. So for those of you who have been under a rock, and that's okay, there's a lot going on in the world, so it's okay. Napheesa Collier, WNBA All-Star 5-time, runner-up to the MVP this season. Top 3 in the league, I would say, over the course of the last 3 years without debate. She scooted into her exit interview. She was quite even out of breath because she had just sat down at the podium, and she took the opportunity during her exit interview before the media asked her questions and called out WNBA leadership, specifically calling out Commissioner Cathy Engelbert for a whole bunch of stuff. The inconsistent officiating, which we've touched on this pod, player safety concerns, which we've touched on this pod, compensation, lack of accountability from leadership, and communication, all of which we've touched on before, but it's now a player saying this. A little different. So we're going to get into it all. And I think the top line that sums up everything about what Napheesa said, and the thing is that everyone's kind of holding on to, digging their nails into, is this quote.
We have the best players in the world. We have the best fans in the world. But right now, we have the worst leadership in the world.
Okay, real quick. because I still vividly remember my jaw being connected to the floor when I heard this for the first time. Um, where were you guys when you heard this, and what was running through your head?
So I was eating breakfast in Las Vegas before game 5 of the semifinals. Had an omelet. It was nice. Then I look at my
Mhm.
Slack because I was still trying to figure out the USA Network situation, right? Like, our WNBA Finals games getting moved to cable. Like, what's happening? And then Ben just texts in the Slack, like, "Phee is cooking," all caps.
I love it.
I
I
think it's
love
all
it.
that kinda needed
Yeah.
to be said, right? Like, she sat down, and I think it took me I think within the first, like, 30 seconds to a minute, I knew that this was gonna be something, because she started
Mm.
to talk about officiating, she started to talk about transparency, she started to talk about, sustainability of the business. She then went into we're gonna talk about all this on the show, some private conversations or a private conversation she had with Cathy Engelbert last February at Unrivaled. And then she voiced the worst leadership in the world line. And I'm basically sending like quotes back to our news Slack channel and saying, I'm going to jump on this because this felt like a big deal. And,
Mm.
sometimes we
Yeah.
wait for these press conferences to develop before starting to write. And we're trying to get a sense, is this news or is this not? But I think we knew right away this is going to be something. And sure enough, Zena, this was very much something and then some.
Well, I love that you were the one to tell Sabrina because the way I found out is because of our other co-host that'll be joining us eventually during the college season, Chantel Jennings. She just wrote, I think, in all caps, "Fee."
Yeah.
And I was actually prepping for a panel I had to do, and I was like typing and looking at stuff, and I just get the notification, "Fee," and I'm like, "What?" I immediately pick up my phone, look through, and I someone recorded it and posted it, and I don't remember what account it was, but I was just like, "Ugh, what?" And the thing about it is that we in the media, we as fans of the sport, whatever, like NBA players were like, "Whoa." Executives, like other everyone was just like, "We don't this is unprecedented." That's been the word that's been like thrown around with this. It's unprecedented in the way that she called out the league, but especially the shot that she was taking, particularly at one person, Cathy Engelbert. And let's be clear, so far, Phee has had overwhelming support for her comments, especially from her fellow players. We have seen people retweet. We've seen the Queen Phee from Paige. We've seen 10 out of 10 no notes from Angel. We've seen Brianna Stewart say that, she's on board with what Phee is saying. Lexi Hull. I mean, there was a slew since she's come out and said her words of players that have said, yeah, she's representing us, our thoughts, and what we believe. So we got to break this down because she's saying that we've got the worst leadership. Why do you guys think that the players consider Kathy such a quote bad leader?
I think a lot of what Fee was talking about was not Cathy Engelbert, the business person, because to Cathy Engelbert's credit, the WNBA
Mhm.
business has changed a lot over the last 6 years since she took over as commissioner, right?
Mhm.
They had the $75 million capital raise. If you think about expansion fees, it was $50 million to Golden State Valkyries in September 2023. This summer, the three teams that will join in 28, 29, and 30, up to $250 million as an expansion fee. They have this $2.2 billion 11-year media rights deal that's coming into effect next year. Those are all positive signs about the change of the business. But I think what was so striking about what Napheesa Collier said was she really came out ideas, again, honesty, transparency,
Mm.
Accountability.
accountability. Like
These are like values. This is character here. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, and she was very much coming at the character of Cathy Engelbert. That's exactly right, Zena. And she did it so forcefully, again, saying that she's the worst leader like in the world. I mean, you can't she basically said everything that you can say, minus saying Cathy Engelbert should be fired right now. Like that was basically what Napheesa Collier said. And, you know, so many players have for so long been frustrated with Cathy Engelbert, especially amid these CBA negotiations. And you would expect tensions to be high when there's an October 31st CBA deadline that is looming, when they're in the course of this negotiation, which comes at a very pivotal point in the league. But we've seen tense negotiations before. Again, the strength, the power, the transparency, like with her comments, that is why this was such a seminal moment in WNBA history, frankly, not just in this season's history.
I'd say sports history.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know of any. I was literally trying to think of who. I went live on Instagram, y'all. That's how crazy this was for me. I've gone live twice for Luka Doncic being traded to the Lakers and this situation. And when I was trying to think about, like, Sabrina, I was like, okay, Enes Kanter Freedom calling out the NBA for their relationships with Turkey and China. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf calling out the NBA, or excuse me, not even calling out the NBA, calling out the American flag and saying that it was a symbol of oppression. And then Gabby Williams calling out the WNBA's prioritization rule. But that none of these things amount to what Napheesa did. Now, you wrote a piece about Cathy's tenure and what she's done. And I feel like, while we can say, yes, things have been done, and it's important to acknowledge things have been done, why are the players not considering this when they're evaluating her as a good or bad leader? Or are they? You've been able to talk to folks too.
I mean, I think a lot of it is because of the state that we're in right now with the current CBA negotiations and how the
Yeah.
league is going to progress from this seminal moment that we're at, right? Like, it was one thing for the league to somewhat devalue the players' contributions to the business back in 2019 when the business model was very different and it was a matter of sustainability versus growth. Now you're in a period where record revenues, record TV viewership, record attendance, record merchandise sales, record everything, right? And there is still an attempt to devalue what the players bring to the business. So when you combine that with, what Ben was saying before about the character and like Napheesa Collier not getting a call from the commissioner and instead getting a call from her number two saying, our data says that injuries are not caused by, referee decisions, or Elena Deladon saying that she didn't get a call when she was, announcing her retirement. And like, this is a
Right.
multi-time MVP, a Olympic gold medalist, a WNBA champion, not even getting a note from the commissioner acknowledging that she's, ending her basketball career. So I think that like lack of tact combined with the lack of respect they feel in this particular moment sort of boils together.
And there was just a specificity, like to Fee's recollection of the conversation she had with Cathy Engelbert. I think the specificity of
Mm.
that conversation really resonated with a lot of people.
And the
Right.
words that she used, right? Like, they should be
Right.
on their knees, thanking us for the media rights deal, right? Like, that is insanely heavy of a statement to make.
And we should say, like, she talked about officiating. Cathy Engelbert saying that, quote, only losers complain about the refs. Like, that was
Mhm.
Fee's recollection of what the commissioner said. That is a sentiment that I think, some people around the league have heard in other forms, if not directly from Cathy Engelbert. Now, we should say that Cathy Engelbert, in a statement when, reflecting on what Napheesa Collier said she was disheartened by the characterization. We should note that that is not a
Not a
denial,
denial.
just disheartened by
Did
the
she lie?
characterization.
Doesn't sound like it. Exactly.
And
And usually statements come out, you say, that is not what I said. And
Categorically
if you had the
false.
opportunity.
That's
Exactly.
something that the WNBA has used that verbiage this week too. So
This is not all caps. Okay, sorry. We're
and the
derailing.
moment that I think
Listen to the last show to know what we're talking about, guys. Go
the
go ahead,
moment that
Ben.
I think also resonates was the exchange too of Napheesa Collier bringing up Caitlin Clark. And we should say that Napheesa Collier and Caitlin Clark have the same representation, right? So it's not a total coincidence in my mind that, Phee voiced Caitlin Clark because presumably Caitlin Clark's camp knew that Phee was going to do that because some of their camp is the same camp. That's
Mm.
important here. But by bringing up Caitlin Clark and basically saying that the commissioner said, like, yes, Caitlin Clark might make $16 million. That was the number that was thrown out in off-court money. But it was what? Like,
She should be grateful.
she should be grateful for the WNBA's platform, in other words. That really pits the players and, the highest profile player, the player that, is so responsible, it plays a central role in the changing economics of the game. It pits players and this figurehead player and all the people who follow the sport now because of that one player, Caitlin Clark, against one other person, Cathy Engelbert. And so, in a normal CBA negotiation, you have the players versus the league. And just by looping in Caitlin Clark there, all of just the Caitlin fans who have come to the league because of her, it pits them against the league. It creates an even stronger block amongst the players. I think, it poured lighter fluid on the
Yes.
fire of her comments. Her comments would have been big otherwise, but, they've taken off to an even another degree because she brought in this dynamic. And, um, I've had some people on Tuesday afternoon and on Wednesday, we've thrown out the hypothetical, who would be or who is more important to the league's next 15 years, for instance, right? Cathy Engelbert, and we'll see how long she lasts with the league. That's a whole nother topic. Or Caitlin Clark. And I think pretty unequivocally, everyone would say Caitlin Clark, the player, is more important to the future of the league than Cathy Engelbert, the commissioner, even though in Cathy Engelbert's comments, the recollection of Phee of this conversation, Cathy Engelbert makes it seem like, no, the league, the shield is more important than the player.
What's interesting about this is you can look at some of the things that Cathy Engelbert has done for the business, and whether you evaluate the money and the deals and the way in which they were set up and what they were used to pay for, you can evaluate whether that was a good use of that money or whatever. But the fact of the matter is the money is there that wasn't there before. So you gotta give that credit to Cathy Engelbert from that perspective. Now, the character element, some folks are like, well, Adam Silver ain't hitting up every player that gets hurt, or he's not, or Roger Goodell in the NFL isn't hitting up every player that gets hurt. But there is something to be said about the manners in which Adam Silver and Roger Goodell interact with their players. Watch the NBA draft. I'm gonna tell you right now, Adam Silver has practiced the handshake. Okay, he knows exactly how to dap these players up. Roger Goodell, same thing, right? Like we look at the ways in which the Super Bowl, the acts that have been happening since Jay-Z and Rock Nation became a part of the Super Bowl. That's a whole nother conversation of how you feel about that. But the point is, Roger Goodell, Robert Manfred, Adam Silver, these big commissioners that we know of other leagues, they have found a way to be in relation with the players. But what's interesting about this, and I want to ask you guys about this, is Kathy's job is not necessarily to be representative of the players, right? Like she's supposed to be representative of the owners and the NBA. So I'm curious how you guys feel that relationship plays out in terms of what the players are asking for from Cathy and also her duty to the NBA and ensuring that the owners are represented, especially in this dynamic of the CBA conversation.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Kathy answers to the board of governors. She answers to Adam Silver and the NBA in the same way that Adam Silver answers to the board of governors and not the NBA players, right? But there is a way to,
Right.
I think, massage all of those egos at once that Adam Silver seemingly figured out. At least the players seem to be pretty happy with him, even though he's not their boss, right? But Kathy Engelbert hasn't quite figured out that middle ground of how to effectively represent the players and also answer to the interests of the board of governors. Like I think about last season when she was asked about the cyberbullying and all of the hateful rhetoric online with regards to Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. And she said, well, a little rivalry is good for everyone. And like, again, it's just not meeting the moment of how to represent the players while also thinking about the broader business of the league, in which case rivalry probably is good for the business of the league, but that's not what was needed in that specific instance, right? So when you are the public face of the league and you represent these players, like there just has to be a better public messaging that she has not been able to strike the balance of. And I think that's where a lot of the difficulties come.
But I think the other thing that was unearthed or highlighted in Fee's comments was some of this dynamic with the NBA. And that was definitely something that I know I've heard a lot of over the last couple of days from people around the league, players, executives, agents, all these people around the league. Because Cathy Engelbert was hired by Adam Silver.
First
Handpicked.
commissioner in WNBA history.
She is the first commissioner and
Right.
assigned that title. Previously, people who ran the WNBA were just called the league president.
Right.
And so kind of commissioner
Mm.
was a change because it denotes a level of standing that puts you on par with the names, you just mentioned, the Goodells, the Manfreds, the Gary Bettmans, the Adam
Mhm,
Silvers.
mhm.
And so you think of her very much in the same way. But in the general WNBA ecosystem, she, from what we understand, things are different than the NFL, right? Because again, and we've talked about this over the summer at length as it relates to the WNBA business, the WNBA, 42% of it is owned by the NBA. 42% of it is owned by WNBA owners. A 16% is owned by people who invested in the capital raise, the $75 million capital raise. And there are overlapping, parties in each of those groups, right? Some people are NBAW, some people are NBA capital raise, et cetera. So that kind of further muddles the situation. And what we have also seen this summer is a number of other topics in which the complexities of the league structure, the WNBA structure, have come about, right? Examples being what is going on with the Connecticut Sun and the potential involvement of the NBA and the NBA Board of Governors and NBA leadership as it relates to where that team is going to play. We've seen the expansion teams in 2028, 29, and 30. I mean, I point blank asked Cathy Engelbert this at the press conference when they announced the teams of what is the message that sends to independent groups who are looking to bid, because the teams in Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia all have NBA ownership ties. We've seen it now with officiating, right? That the head of NBA officiating is Monty McCutcheon. He also oversees WNBA officiating. And we think about the trainings that go on, or the standards, or the NBA refs account weighing in on the Alyssa Thomas Napheesa Collier play. Or, and we've done reporting on this in the past, how from 2018 to 2022, the NBA in official press releases, when they, were to designate changes in referee assignments, they used the word promote when they referred to refs who were going from the WNBA and the G League to the NBA. It's all like one big pot, one big ecosystem. And Fee's comments really, I think, highlighted the messiness, but also the situation, the current ecosystem of the W.
Yeah, I mean, she's calling out Cathy Engelbert, but a lot of these things that she's referring to, I'm not even sure Cathy Engelbert has the jurisdiction to fix those things.
That's exactly what I was trying to get to. I wonder how much is she just the face of these issues versus the actual, person that has her hands in the mix. Sorry for interrupting. Yeah.
No, absolutely, because, you can call out Cathy because of the comments she made, or Napheesa's recollection of the comments that she made about Caitlin Clark and, rookie salaries, or the players' gratefulness for the TV deal, right? And that is all directly at Cathy. But when we're talking about the leadership of the WNBA, it is not just Cathy Engelbert. It is Adam Silver and the Board of Governors. And they all take equal blame or fault or, credit for what the league has become over the last few years.
And we should say, like, in all sports, commissioners serve as punching bags in some respects, right?
Yeah.
Whether
Right.
that is
That's
for
true.
They
the
get booed at
public,
the draft,
right?
Right. Yep. Yep.
Or
Yep.
or
Yep.
they're punching bags for the owners. If there's messy situations going on, like one of the reasons why Roger Goodell get paid $50 or $60 million a year,
Obscene
some
amount of money,
crazy
yeah.
number, is because like he stands up there and he basically takes it, right? And he keeps it
Mm.
moving. I think one of the
$40
questions,
million a year.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the questions that I think we have, and we're trying to figure this out when we talk to people, is in some respects, like, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Like, Cathy Engelbert, the business has undoubtedly changed in her tenure. Now, you can argue, as many players do, that is in large part because of the players, but that goes back
Mhm.
to some of the CBA conversation and conversations about, Caitlin and Paige and Angel and others. But like, if if all she is, and I'm not saying this is all she is, but hypothetically, if all she is middle management, so to speak, then like, is the frustration from players worth it? And that, I think, is one of the questions that a lot of people are asking around the league, ourselves included. Like, depending on her responsibilities, depending on how much agency she has, depending on how much power she actually has, and power and control were two other words that Phee used,
Right.
is the discontent, is the heightened tensions between players and Cathy, is it worth it? Is it needed? Or, is other change inevitable in the future?
Now, my question to you is who is asking that question? Is it the owners asking that question? Is it worth it? Is it the players asking that question? What perspective are you taking that from?
It's a little bit of everyone, honestly.
Okay, so I want to keep it going and call out something that we can say, Cathy fixed this, but it isn't just Cathy. There's other people involved in this. You just listed one, Ben, Monty McCutcheon, talking about the officiating issues. Let's hear what she had to say about the role that leadership plays in that.
Again, the league talks about sustainability. This is about sustainability. How are you going to protect your players? How are you going to make sure that we have the best product on the floor night after night when it's so inconsistent and people are getting hurt left and right?
So Nafisa is clearly tying officiating inconsistencies to injuries. Um, to which the league likes to trot out that their data that none of us have seen and none of us have been able to verify doesn't support this. This is not just a Cathy thing. I mean, literally, Fee's coach, Cheryl Reeve, just called for the job of the person that is actually in charge of this maybe a few days before Fee. I mean, they just built on top of each other. It was
It was really just
just masterpiece.
the throwing the lighter fluid and then Phee just lit the match,
And
you
then
know?
lit the match.
Hey,
I mean, it was just like, yeah, literally, that's exactly what happened.
and yet,
Uh,
did anyone hear anything? I mean, I was on it, but Cheryl Reeves, her exit interview,
So
because
tame.
like
oh, right.
I had a GM on Tuesday afternoon who was like, "So did Cheryl give her exit interview today?" And I told this person, I'm like, "Yeah, but like nothing really of note happened in it." This
Listen,
person was like, "Yeah, I was looking for quotes. I was looking for anything." I was like, honestly, I
She
was
basically said, like, "Phee is a great spokesperson for this league," you know?
and that's it. And then, sometimes you don't have to do too much,
Yeah.
right? Because she already did a
She
lot.
made her
She
statement, yeah.
already had
Did too much.
her
Yeah.
profanity laced situation, after game 3. And she got what she needed out. And then she said, Fee, you got it. You go with it.
That's the
No
baton.
profanity needed. It was incredibly eloquent how Napheesa Collier was able to get her words out and her thoughts out here. But let's talk about this officiating inconsistency, because we just also relayed the connection in between the NBA and the WNBA, and who comes out and makes a statement about the officiating in connection to, Napheesa Collier's comments. Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban talking about or offering his insight as to what happens with these referees. They're coming from the G League, or that the training is inconsistent. He offered his own thoughts on this. This seems to be like a larger thing than just the WNBA. This is a refereeing issue within the ecosystem of the NBA, WNBA. And I'm curious, what could the league do? And this is the league, NBA, WNBA all together. What could the league do to change this and fix this situation, to buy some goodwill with the players, to say, hey, we do care about this product. We do care about your injuries, and potential injuries. Even though we say they're not connected, we do care about you guys potentially getting hurt, from missed calls, etc. Here's what we're going to do. X. What would that X, you think, need to be in order for the players to be like, okay, okay, we see what you're doing?
I think it's really clear it's just more investment in the officiating program. You know, we're talking about officials who don't get paid the same amount as their counterparts in the NBA. They're not full-time salaried employees. They don't get benefits, so they have to work jobs throughout the year, which means they're officiating WNBA games and college basketball games and other leagues. And that is basically 3 different jobs, that require 3 different styles of officiating. So naturally that,
Mm,
just affects your ability to ref a game in any individual circumstance. So when you're talking about a referee who just isn't compensated the same, like they're by definition not as good as the ones who are in the NBA, right? So what you need to do is like standardize training, standardize their accountability procedures, make sure that everybody knows what calls they're getting right, what calls they're getting wrong, like publicize those last 2-minute reports, potentially make their jobs easier by instituting the replay center, so they're not handling literally everything at the, crunch time of the game. Um, it seems very clear to me that like if you just put more money into this, officiating would get better because more people would think of it as a desirable destination to want to be a WNBA ref, and you would get the best possible applicants, which is just not the case right now.
I think all of the points Sabrina makes are super valid, but to me, they're even like those are steps 2, 3, and 4 for I think what the players want in this situation. I think the first thing the players want is for the league to admit that they have a problem
Yeah,
that
that's
needs to
true.
be fixed.
hmm
Because I think there is an insistence, a hesitance, a conviction. If we're going to give the league credit, like they say that
We
their
have the best
officials.
referees in the world. That's what Napheesa said, right?
And,
hmm
Monty McCutcheon, I did a story 2 years ago at this time at the finals. I think I might have actually even been in this very spot in a Las Vegas hotel room, filing that story, finishing the reporting on that story. Um, like the league insists that they have elite officials, and we should say like it's really hard to officiate, and me and Sabrina and you, Zena, I'm going to speak for you on this one. Like we're not envious of being in those roles, and I'm sure they get the
Yeah,
vast majority of calls right, because think about how many calls
right.
are made on a given game, and yet like players want the league to take, again, some accountability and or just reflect in an honest way. And that was, again, another sentiment that Phee had. That might be step one, and then steps 2 through however many are all the things Sabreena just rattled off.
Right, because we've talked about like freedom of movement and what style of play the officiating should be
Mhm.
supporting. And I think there's some, you know, obviously the conversation has gone into, well, it's gotten way too physical at the WNBA level. And like I've expressed on the show before that I think physicality is not necessarily a bug, but it has to be restrained, just with consistent officiating. But like Ben said, there has to be an acknowledgement that like, hey, we have an officiating issue first before you can address any of that. And then you can get to, well, is it getting too physical? What are some other things we can, look towards? And I think a lot of it just comes back to this overarching point of like WNBA keeps saying we're bringing in more and more revenue, more and more revenue. Like, where is it all going, right? If it's not going into improving the officiating experience, if it's not going into improving the player experiencing, if it's not going into the digital product where like I go on WNBA.com and I can't check the box score of a playoff game on their own
Mhm.
website, like I would be just so freaking upset if I were a player to not know where all of this hard-earned cash is actually being used towards.
And it's really hard now to hide behind it, right? Like you could say back in the day that, oh, we just got this capital raise, or we just got, got a certain amount of money and we've put it towards data, or we've put it towards our technology on the site. Like more and more fans are starting to pick up and do mental math easy of, well, the tickets cost $100 and we just sold out. Everyone has sold out their arenas on average. There's a stupid amount of money that's being made here just off tickets alone. And we're talking about jerseys selling out. We're talking about merch going through the roof. Like all
Expansion fees.
there's right, expansion fees, right? You go from 50 million, which by the way, that 50 million, shout out to Cathy, I'll give her this, help pay for the flights. But these were the same flights that you said you couldn't do a year before, that you couldn't make it happen. And you were able to make it happen. And by the way, I just want to really quickly say the quote. If you did not hear what Mark Cuban or read what Mark Cuban said, he said, look at how they hire and train new officials. Look at how they promote new officials and from where refs get trained in the G League, referencing the G League for the NBA. If they aren't good there, because there's very little investment made in training them there, how are they going to be good when they get to the WNBA or NBA? Exactly what Sabreena was mentioning.
Well, and all this is why, like, I think Napheesa Collier's 4.5 minutes was so significant because there are so many tentacles. I mean, we're more a half hour into this show, and we could talk about this, for much, much longer. We've had plenty of
Sure.
conversations throughout the week about various specific elements of what she has said. And she found a way through her comments to weave all of these things together in a concise and specific and direct message
Yeah.
that clearly is resonating with a lot of people. And you can debate the veracity or the truth to some of her comments. Certainly some people at the league office disagree with some of her sentiments, but she certainly did. It was a masterclass in creating a narrative, in framing a narrative, in coming up with a way to try and loop all of these things together in a way that is concise, in a way that does make sense, because it so much does tie back to the business and the CBA and refereeing. It all is a part of
Right, it's
what you
wrapped
said.
up in this nice bow of leadership and accountability and transparency, and the players just wanna know what is happening at the league level and how they can benefit from their contribution to it, right?
Right. Okay. We got to, I know we've been talking for so long about this and we have other things that we need to get to, but I do want to dive into particularly, you already mentioned this quote, Ben, and I want to play it. It's the one that's about Caitlin and it's about the players getting on their knees to thank their lucky stars.
Her response was, Caitlin should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court because without the platform that the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything. And in that same conversation, she told me players should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the media rights deal that I got them.
Now, I cannot imagine this being said to LeBron James. I can't imagine this being said to Michael Jordan. Can't imagine this being said to Kobe Bryant. Let's just keep going back in time before the league was what it is at that point. I can't imagine this being said to Irvin Johnson or Larry Bird or let's go all the way back to Wilt. Okay, I can't imagine this being said to players that were dominating and clearly the focal point of why this league was an interesting I don't know, barnyard type of thing you wanted to go support way back when. The league is not some spectacle that people are making fun of or people are like going to because they have nothing else to do. People are bought in, people are invested into this league. And it's because of these players and the way that they show up and the way that they participate and the way that they awe audiences. I cannot imagine saying this to any of the men as the NBA was growing. And yet the commissioner has said this about Caitlin Clark.
Per Napheesa Collier.
Yes.
Per Napheesa Collier, allegedly. Thank you. Per Napheesa Collier. And you guys are such reporters. I love it. I also am looking at this like this is so wrong. Like that money was made and put in place before she ever touched a WNBA court, right? In terms of her Nike deal and all her NIL deals before that. And that can be said about the Page and Angel and everyone else that, Napheesa was referring to in terms of the young talent. And all of these players have shown that you can open up gyms, but you can't just put anybody out on the court. You got to put out these players that have contributed to the success of this league, to the way that people have completely bought in to this product. How do we get back from this? How can Cathy come back from this? And how does this sort of conversation or this point that Cathy has allegedly said, according to Napheesa, impact CBA discussions?
I think you just deny that's how you come back from this because there's no validity to what she said about, Caitlin Page, Angel. So much of their popularity was generated when they were in high school, when they were in
High
college,
school.
right? They are singular superstars before having even touched WNBA basketball. And
Mm,
their, star power, their ability to command sponsorship dollars is not related to their WNBA abilities. I can tell you that. It's not hurt by it, but it's not, because of it.
right.
And it goes back to like the general idea of does the league respect what the players are bringing to the table, right? And comments like these suggest no. I think a lot about like Donald Sterling and the Clippers back in the day when they were talking about boycotting the games and because they were the ones who put the product on and not Donald
Right.
Sterling and like who actually creates the game and it's obviously the players, right? The players are the one who are creating the business. Um, and it's just a consistent pattern of failing to give the players credit for their contributions.
And we should say, I mean, Sabreena talked to Kelsey Plum, one of the vice
Mhm.
presidents of the union earlier this week, and Plum still described the talks as combative. I mean, she said they were nowhere near they need to be,
She seems like every time we submit a proposal and a counter proposal, we're further apart than when we started.
and she
Right.
used an
The
amazing
more we
analogy.
present, right?
Yeah.
She
She
used an
said the more
amazing
we
analogy.
present, the further we are.
Yeah.
Her appetizer analogy. I mean,
Yeah, because obviously there's a lot of issues on the table for the CBA. You're talking about maternity and travel and benefits and retirement and all that. And I asked Kelsey, like, where are you at on any of those other issues? Because we talk so much about revenue share and salary, right? And she says, Sabrina, if we go to dinner but we're at different restaurants, what does it matter what we order for an appetizer?
hmm.
Oh, that's so good.
And
God, I love Kelsey Plum.
And
That's good.
so we'll really see what happens here. I mean, I had a story that went up on the site on Thursday that,
Yes.
tried to get into this idea of what does a work stoppage look like? What would the potential consequences be? And one of the tacks I took in the reporting of that story was to try and talk to some people from other sports leagues about 10 CBA negotiations and see if there are any similarities. And one of the, I think, strongest similarities that, I was told and explored in the piece was to the NHL, the National Hockey League in the 1990s, because in the early 90s, the NHL went through this period of rapid expansion. It went, up to 26 teams. It had 6 teams that it added within a 3-year span. It moved into new markets like South Florida. There was a famous Sports Illustrated cover in 1994 that said it had the tag on the NHL's hot, why the NHL's hot and the NBA is not. The NHL was the cool league and the NBA's image had cooled. And in 1994, the NHL, much like the WNBA right now, went through a tense negotiation in which salary structure, salary system was a key point of contention. And in the NHL, they ended up missing games 103 days, 468 total games in the 94-95 season. And, I had someone who worked at the NHLPA and negotiated that deal. He told me that there was this incredible momentum in the league at that time. And he said that I think it took, years for the NHL to catch back up. That momentum fizzled out. And we saw that because attendance dipped. There was significant resentment between the players and the league, even more so than before. The NHL happened to also then enter into what was called the dead puck era, this era of offensive decline where the product was just worse. And it all coalesced with them having a total missed season in 2004, I believe. And so that is like, you don't want that if you are the
Right.
WNBA, right? You're in this moment of momentum. You're in this moment of growth. You're fighting over salary systems. You don't want to miss games now, and you certainly don't want to miss a season, 8 years from now, say,
Mhm.
when they're talking about all these issues again.
That headline is so apt because how often have you heard people say this summer, like, the
Right,
WNBA is hot and the NBA is not?
right.
Not right? Yeah, and I also appreciate, you talk about the NHL in that article, but the resounding theme here between MLB also having a similar experience was that things cooled in terms of the support or the buzz around these leagues, and that is not what the WNBA wants. Now, I love reading the comments on your articles because I also like to hear what other people think. It was interesting, one comment was like, "Well, don't think that WNBA fans are just gonna chill out or basically not buy in like some of these other leagues like, these fans are really invested and they wanna make this work." And so I was like, well, that is very interesting to see, in the court of public opinion, a lot of fans are gonna be really upset if there's not a league by next year.
Plus, it's
And there's
important
the
sorry.
Go ahead.
It's important to point out that, like, WNBA fans have other opportunities to see their favorite WNBA players in action in a way that NHL and Major League Baseball
I
did
was
not,
just
right?
gonna
Like, I'm
say.
coming into
Yep.
Vegas this morning, and there is an Unrivaled billboard on the way into the Strip where the WNBA Finals are happening tomorrow. So there are options, that the WNBA players have that are just different from a leverage perspective compared to other men's sports in particular.
Another comment I saw, Unrivaled potentially going 5 by 5 rather than 3 on 3. And I was like, "Ooh, this could get messy." On the work stoppage front, I just wanna make sure that everyone here understands the timeline. So, Halloween is not gonna be the only scary night because of what's going out on the streets, okay? It could be really scary because that's the deadline, right? So, Ben, break us down on, like, the work stoppage. I think you did a really great job of laying out what could happen also by that October 31 deadline.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios here. I mean, some of them include them reaching an extension. And what an extension is, the way it was described to me by a few people is it is this public signaling both to fans, but also to stakeholders that we're continuing to negotiate and we're doing it in good faith and we want to get a deal done. They also could not reach an extension and they could continue to negotiate. There are scenarios down the road about the WNBA trying to implement what would be called the last best offer. And in that situation, then you could see the players vote to strike potentially. There is a long shot, long shot, long shot. This very much is unlikely to happen, but we saw it in Major League Baseball in the 1994 strike that they had, where you could start a season with an expired CBA and players could elect to strike in the middle of a year. Like that's what happened in baseball
Mm.
in the mid 90s that led to the cancellation of a World Series. We saw in the NBA in 2011, the NBPA actually briefly dissolved
That
12
was
days
crazy.
before they ended up reaching a new contract. And that often, in some respects, the way it was relayed to me, it's almost a legal tactic. It allowed them to file a number of lawsuits they wouldn't have otherwise been able to file as a players union. And they ended up reaching a deal, you know, a little more than a week later. So there are all these different permutations. There's all these different scenarios that could happen going forward. And look, I think it's just a matter of we'll wait and see, and we'll wait and see. I think the one thing as we round this conversation out is the tensions are really high, and there is no sign that they're going to cool down anytime soon, especially as these WNBA finals loom. It is really the thing that is hovering over this entire series.
Right, and as we start game 1 tonight on Friday, Cathy Engelbert delivers her annual State of the Union address before game 1, and, you can imagine there'll be some questions about Napheesa Collier's comments.
I don't know the last time I've been this excited to hear a State of the Union address in general, but I'm just saying, like, particularly one from the WNBA league president or commissioner, now that Kathy is here. Oof, this is tough. This is tough. But you know what's tougher? Game 1 of the WNBA Finals, and that's happening very soon. So we got to break that down on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. Okay, guys, the moment's here. Game 1 kicks off tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern in Las Vegas, where Ben and Sabreena are. And Las Vegas Aces taking on the Phoenix Mercury. It will be the first WNBA Finals played as a best-of-7 series, as Ka Copper said in her interview today, or her pregame talks or media availability. I almost got thrown off when she said, "Got to win 4." I was like, 4? Is she talking about like Asia Wilson's MVPs? It's hard to catch up on that.
I had someone with one of the two teams be like, "I'm excited to be part of the first best of 7." And I said, "Yeah, you're still going to be excited if you're up 3-1." Like, I think you'll probably be
Right.
you'll probably be wishing at
Yeah.
that point the series is over. But I digress. Keep going.
No, that's true. That's true. Well, either way, I'm very excited to see how, one, the extension of a series, what impact that has. We know depth and availability is so huge in these playoffs. We saw what happened with the Fever just, right before this last semifinal. So, Sabrina, Ben, what are the vibes in Vegas other than that Unrivaled sign?
I mean, I think what I am most interested in is how are the Las Vegas Aces going to guard the size of the Phoenix Mercury? I think the vibes are good from both teams. I think both teams have tried to focus on the series amid all the other things that we have just spent the first part of this episode talking about. They both seem genuinely focused on the task at hand. And from a basketball perspective, again, to me, a lot of this is going to come down to Satu Sabli, I think, might be the pivot player in this series. I mean, Phoenix has lost 2 games this postseason. She scored 9 and 10 points respectively. Those are her lowest 2 scoring output games of the playoffs. And it's not a coincidence because, we hear the term unicorn thrown out, but her skill set, her size, Satu, like, she towers over a lot of players. And I think it's deceptive, even on TV sometimes, because she doesn't post up. She posts up less than 10% of her shots are post-up attempts, and she is 6'4". Like, she could theoretically post up players on any given possession, but that very much is not her game. And so for me, it's how effective will Chelsea Gray, will Jackie Young, these guards be when they are guarding Satu Sabali, if they're switched on to Satu Sabali. Like, I would expect a lot of Asia guarding AT. That's going to be a matchup to watch, certainly. And, the other guard of choice of the Aces is going to try and slow down Kalia Copper. But if Satu has a big series, I think it makes Phoenix really, really dangerous.
Yeah, I think the size is so interesting, and that causes just so much cross matching because, like you said, Asia's probably going to guard Alyssa Thomas, but Natasha Mack guards Asia Wilson, and Monica Koamakani guards Jackie Young, but then Jackie Young guards Kalia Copper, and so transition is going to be so interesting because uh, you got to get your matchups right. Who benefits from like who's matching up with whom? Las Vegas's transition defense has been like one of their points of contention throughout the whole postseason. It was really hard for them to get back against Indiana. I mean, Indiana was just getting up off of makes, like not even in transition. They were just pushing the
Right.
ball up off of dead balls. So I think that, just adds another layer to it because not only do you have to get back against a team like Phoenix that pushes the ball so well in transition where you have Alyssa Thomas who can just grab and go and make so many different plays on the break. Now you also have to worry about all of these matchups to keep in mind because again, like Phoenix has all of this size where Satu Sabali is their 3, right? And she's 6'4". And you're looking at a Vegas team that like often likes to play small where Chelsea Gray is their power
Yep.
forward and she's, 5'11". So it's just a very interesting battle of strengths there.
And Phoenix they score the 4th most points per game, fast break points per game. Nearly 15% of their points are scored in transition. And the thing, especially in game 1, I'm curious about, and Becky Hammon harked on this after their game 5 victory, and she stressed it again on Thursday, was, look, Phoenix is a different challenge. Like, they look, as Sabreena was talking about, very different than the Indiana Fever. Their lineups, how they substitute players. Phoenix uses their starters less than any other team in the league because they just, have a strong bench and they have trust in their bench. And so think about transition defense and the challenge that AT can create because she is such a unique player. Like, it's might be hard to anticipate the Alyssa Thomas transition attack or what Phoenix looks like. Now, we should say the Aces beat the Mercury
Yeah, 3 times
three
during the regular
times in the
season.
I mean, what
Every time
yeah.
Asia Wilson
Yeah,
played,
3-1.
Las Vegas won the game, which is what makes this so fascinating
Mhm.
because Vegas has home court advantage. They have the regular season advantage, and yet they're just not playing as well as Phoenix is. So how much stock do you write into, okay, well, during the regular season, during August, when Vegas was on that 16-game winning streak, they delivered 2 losses to the Mercury, but also, you know, Phoenix just took out New York and Minnesota,
Right.
last year's finalists in back-to-back series, right? And admittedly, there were injury issues there, but they, you know, battled back from a 20-point deficit against Minnesota when Napheesa Collier was on the court, right? And they beat, New York when Brianna Stewart was on the court, given all she had in that Game 3 elimination game. So it's hard to reconcile those two competing interests where, like, all of the on paper structural advantages would be like, yeah, Vegas 3-1 regular season series, like home court advantage, a decisive Game 7 would happen at Michelob Ultra Arena.
Experience.
Right. This is the core of a
Experience,
team that
right?
has won 2
Familiarity.
titles as recently as
Mhm.
2022 and 2023 with Becky Hammon as their head coach. And Nate Tibbetts won his first playoff series this year, right? And this is a Phoenix
Right.
team that returns 2 players from last season, and that was a team that went 19 and 21. So there's just a lot of newness on the Phoenix side, and it seems like they're discovering themselves every game, right? Like the team that we saw at the end of the Minnesota series was almost different than the team we saw at the beginning of the Minnesota series. So their ability to evolve and adapt is so interesting compared to Vegas, where we kind of know what they've been since that loss to Minnesota, right? That 53-point loss to Minnesota, I should say, during the regular season.
Well, I think it's interesting that when you talk about the 3-1, the only game that was like a blowout was that last one, right? The 83-61 game in August, um, between
Phoenix's
these 2
lowest
teams.
scoring
Everything
total
else
of
has
the
been
season.
like
Yeah.
a difference of like 4 points. So I'm sure Phoenix also has that circled on the fact that they almost had this team. You guys have been talking about the offense. I'm really happy you said that because I can talk about the defense aspect. You're talking about switching on to Satu Sabli. What about when Satu does a switch with her guards or her posts? And that's who's in front of you. We saw Minnesota really struggle with their perimeter attack because bodies on bodies and length and size were switching out onto them on the perimeter, and they struggled. And also, Phoenix, second best rebounding in the playoffs in this team. Like, they find a way to the glass, and that is something too. When you talk about Las Vegas wants to have their tempo, they want to go and run. They're gonna have to send folks to the glass, make sure they stop. They make stops as well. So this is gonna be very interesting. So before we get into exactly what we're gonna be looking at and what we're thinking for this series, you know I gotta do it, guys. These are our looks presented by BetMGM. Lock in for every basket with this WNBA SGP Boost token. Use your token on any WNBA SGP, and you'll score a bigger payout if your SGP wins. Okay, so we just laid out a lot of basketball stuff, but what are some storylines you're going to be following most closely as we head into Game 1? I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't even know if it's a storyline. It's just A'ja Wilson. A'ja Wilson continuing her dominant performance, taking this team completely flipping this team in the middle of the season to that 16-game win streak into these playoffs, being able to meet the moment in these playoffs when her team needed it the most. Will she be able to continue that dominance against who knows? You said Mac's gonna guard A'ja Wilson. I think Tibbetts might switch it up, have a little bit of AT, and what would that look like, right? What would that MVP matchup look like? So that's what I'll be looking for. What are you guys looking at?
I think, on the other side of that, A'ja Wilson has had a very decorated career, right? Already 2 championships, already 4 MVPs. You're looking at Alyssa Thomas, perennially a bridesmaid, right?
Ooh.
2 misses in the finals, the last one coming against the Las Vegas Aces and A'ja Wilson, and, finals MVP Chelsea Gray at the time. She's never won an MVP. She's finished 3rd to A'ja Wilson this year. So I think her, coming to Phoenix, starting this new chapter of her career, maybe starting a new arc, right? Like where she gets to win the biggest prize. I think that's a very interesting, major note for Phoenix, right? Like, is this the year of Alyssa Thomas, right? Like she set all of those triple-double records. She has basically remade the Mercury in her image, right? The entire team functions based on how Alyssa Thomas goes. And this would be the ultimate culmination of that, right? Like she gets to exercise those demons against the Aces from 2022 and lay her own stamp on what has been a very historically successful franchise in Phoenix.
I mean, I think there's a lot of history, as Sabreena talks about, that is at stake in this series. The Las Vegas Aces, they would win their 3rd title in 4 years. Only the Houston Comets have done that. We have seen, what it means for A'ja Wilson right now, having won 4 MVPs to cap it off with another title. I mean, it only adds to her legacy. as you're talking about, Sabreena. For the Phoenix Mercury, think about they're almost ahead of schedule, you can argue, right? They have two,
Mhm.
as Sabreena said,
Yep.
just two returning players. I think the next most team to ever make the finals in either the NBA or the WNBA in terms of roster turnover had 6 players
Wow.
from year over year. And they have 2, right? Kalia Copper and Natasha Mack. They haven't won a title since 2014, but if they win this one, they will have won their 4th in franchise history. That will tie them with, the Comets, the Lynx, and the Storm for number 1 in WNBA history. And it's an interesting example, or I wonder what it means for team building going forward. Think about how big the Mercury have swung this past offseason trying to add Thomas and Sabali. So, huge implications there. Can I throw out one fun
Let's
storyline?
do
Is
it.
that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, the
Well,
fun.
there's a ton here, but yes,
I
go.
mean, I can bet this one is not going to be on your bingo card, Zena.
Oh, let me see. Let me see. Go ahead.
If we have any listeners from the state of South Dakota, please send me an email, send Sabreena an email, leave a comment on the show. Zena, any guesses why I'm bringing up the state of South Dakota?
No, not even. And we have minimum time, so I'm not even gonna try to guess. Go ahead.
Because this series very much centers around 2 figures from the great state of South Dakota. Becky Hammon and Nate Tibbetts both are from the state of South Dakota. Becky Hammon,
Born in the same year, grew up at the same time playing high school basketball.
we should
That's
say
crazy.
across
And
the
I need to remember that because I always think of Becky Hammond for Colorado because of where she went to school, but nope, South Dakota. You're
Colorado
right.
state,
Mhm.
but same state.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
where they grew up, we should say, in the state of South Dakota, across the state. And Becky Hammon even played against Nate Tibbetts' dad. Nate Tibbetts' dad was an all-time great high school coach, girls coach in the state of South Dakota. Once won, I think, 111 straight games, tons of state championships, like an all-time great Hall of Fame coach. And Becky Hammon had played against him as a high schooler, and I asked her about it because she scored 33 points one game, 41 in another, and he even compared her, Fred Tibbetts, Nate's dad, to a Magic Johnson level player in high school. So, this
Wow.
series, a big win for the state of South Dakota. When I was talking to Becky about it on Thursday, she just started to rattle off the pride that South Dakotans feel when they go
Mm.
on to achieve this high level of athletic success. And she started to name basketball players, and then after a few names, she ran out and she was like Adam Vinatieri, the Hall of Fame kicker with the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots. And it was like, oh, we've reached the short list. We've run through all the basketball names, and so we're on to
It's gonna
NFL
go to
players.
the
It's like,
NFL kicker.
but at least we know that with all that else is going on, the South Dakota bound to have a winning head coach here.
That's good. It absolutely was not on my bingo card, but that's shout out to South Dakota for that representation. I'm gonna list 2 more that are on my mind. When you talked about Alyssa Thomas, great point. It'd be really cool if she wins a championship and DeWanna Bonner wins a championship, and now they got one together as a couple. It's great. That'd be
She
really
wins
fun.
another going back to Phoenix,
She'll
having
right, going
won
back
in
to Phoenix. This will be her
2014.
third,
Your
though.
third. She won
Yeah.
in 2000 and
It'll be her
2014.
third.
Correct.
For DeWanna Bonner, I'm talking about. And the other one that's really just a storyline that's not necessarily going into game 1, but I do think these 2 players are gonna be so crucial. And you talk about team building, Ben, you made me think of this. Nalissa Smith, DeWanna Bonner. Great mid-season acquisitions. Look at how much they've been able to impact their teams, whether it was in the regular season or now in the playoffs, and that's a lot of fun to watch in general.
We'll keep throwing some quickies out. I mean, we have a lot of influence from NBA assistant coaches and head coaches in this series, right? Becky Hammon, Nate Tibbetts, both obviously have NBA backgrounds. We have Christy Tolliver, who's a top assistant on the Phoenix Mercury.
John Lucas.
Another assistant too, right? John Lucas on Becky
Yeah,
Hammond's staff. She has a number of former NBA assistants. So it's going to be an interesting test case for,
The 5 teams that are hiring head coaches.
right. To see what they
Ooh.
look for or NBA influence in the WNBA. This is the first all Pacific time zone series, Sabreena. Desert Duel.
Is it?
That's a good one.
It is, yeah.
Okay. I guess
that-
in the finals.
that's another interesting
Technically,
wrinkle here.
Phoenix not in the Pacific time zone.
Fair
They're a
point.
Mountain Time team.
Fair
but,
point. Fair
At the
point.
same time for now. Yeah.
Okay. So, who do you guys have as the edge? And also, give me a breakdown, game breakdown. Is it
Okay.
gonna be
So I know
4-3?
Phoenix has lost the first games of each of their last 2 series. They come in here on a rest advantage, having closed out their semifinal in 4. Vegas had to go through 5. And you may have heard a very physical series against the Indiana Fever. I think the rest is going to help Phoenix steal one in game 1, and then they're going to keep home court advantage the rest of the way. So I'm taking Phoenix in 6, and I'm going to have Satu Sabali as my finals MVP.
Why don't you go next, Zena? Why don't you go next?
I like that. I almost wanted to base mine off of the Yahoo Sports corgi. I don't know if you guys saw that. Ended up,
And you're
I think it
making
was
fun of me for bringing up time zones?
I'm not. I'm actually very grateful because, people don't know Mountain Time. They forget about it. It's one of those, it's kind of like the South Dakota of Mountain Times, You just don't want to forget them. So, yeah, I was going to go with that. I like the way it ended, the 4-2 Aces. But I do think this series is going to 7. And I feel like Phoenix might have the edge here. So I think it might be 4-3. Actually, yeah, it's going to be 4-3 Phoenix.
Elimination
And
game on the road.
They're going to have to win it on the road.
Oh, God. See, now I'm also taking the Phoenix Mercury. So
Bulletin board material for the Las Vegas Aces.
6 games. I have Alyssa Thomas getting over the hump, being the finals MVP in this
I didn't
series.
choose that. But yes, I think Alyssa will get a finals MVP. I agree with you with that.
I mean, I
feel like we've jinxed it now.
Yeah, I have
Aces.
way less
I
conviction.
know. I feel like we just jinxed it.
in our
And I'm a
picks,
little
Ben
worried.
was so sad when you said the Mercury.
I know. The thing is, I just, it's the depth. For me, it's the depth. And Phoenix has it. I don't want to ever bet against A'ja Wilson because she's A'ja Wilson for me. But the depth there for Phoenix, their bench has been able to show up. You got Sammy Whitcomb. I'm sorry. I can't cross you out. I just can't. So anyways, now we'll close it out. Guys, let us know. Did we just jinx it? Did we just ruin the finals? I don't know. That's all we got for you guys today. Come back here tomorrow morning. We'll be back in your feeds with reactions from game 1 of the finals. And just remember, our cadence is changing. So it's going to be right after, the morning after a game, you're going to hear our voices. So make sure you are subscribed. Then you won't miss it. Yes, I am pointing at you guys right now. Do your job, subscribe, and you'll make sure that you'll hear all of our breakdowns of the game, and make sure you're following us anywhere and everywhere you're listening. Go check out our friends at the Yahoo Sports Hub. They've got the corgi. They've got other stuff. They've got a lot of stuff that you want to be a part of. So sports.yahoo.com/women's-sports. On behalf of The Athletic, Sabreena Merchant, Ben Pickman, this therapy style setup that we've got going on YouTube, and South Dakota, I'm Zena Cada, thanking you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to No Off Season. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.